Doug! Did you know that today is Tom Hanks' birthday?
No kidding. How are you going to celebrate?
A true gentleman never tells. Welcome to the Diehards. Talking about players in a vacuum is fun, but when you're on the clock and two guys are neck and neck in your rankings, what do you do? Tonight, we are going to settle some of the toughest draft day debates. I am your host, JJ Wenner, and I am joined by the fantasy orthicle himself, Doug Orth. And our guest tonight is the host of the Auction Pod, hands down my favorite fantasy football podcast. He's a writer for Football Guys, the creator of the legendary Par Sheets, no matter what some other people might have claimed. And most importantly, a public defender serving a vital role in our justice system. And if I happen to mention, he's just a great freaking guy. It's Drew Davenport. How you doing, buddy?
Great. You know, I was just tweeting out that we're live, and I see the graphic. I saw it yesterday. I have to say you elevated my status a little bit with that robe. It looks nice on me, but no, I can be the judge here. But yes, thank you for having me, guys. I love hanging out with you. A little bit absent-mindedness last night pushed us to today. Apologies. That's all on me, not on your host. But I'm stoked. I'm here, ready to rock.
Hey, speaking of, have you ever considered running for a judgeship?
That's a great question. I've actually had a couple people ask me. One of the things about my career is that I've been around my county to every court in my county. So I've made a lot of friends. I wouldn't mind it. The problem is it has to be the right situation where I'm actually living in the jurisdiction where I would run. Unfortunately, I live literally about a mile and a half south of the county that I work in. So I live in a different county, which disqualifies me from a lot of positions in the county where I know everyone. That was probably dumb of me to live in a different county. So the opportunities may not present themselves. That's okay. I might be at the PD's office as a lifer. Who knows?
Well,
all right.
Hey, Drew, Drew, as kind of a teaser for you to get ready for that judgeship, we're going to refer to you as your honor for the rest of the evening. Okay.
I think that sounds amazing. I tell my wife to call me that, and she says, "Hell no."
I tell my wife to call me lots of things, but I don't get those either.
You have to earn some of that, JJ, though.
Maybe. I do wear an eye patch every once in a while. Anyway, that was a pirate joke. So back to what we should talk about. One of the topics, Drew, that you speak about often on your pod that I love so much is about being purposeful in what you do. From nominating and bidding, right? You always preach to have a reason for what you are doing while you're doing it. Can you talk a little bit about where this came from?
Yeah, so this is going to sound really funny. Over the last couple of years, when I've gotten interested in just looking at TikTok when I'm screwing around or sitting at a light, I've watched a lot of, they show you things that you want to watch. They see what you watch and then they show you more of it. I get a lot of philosophy and stuff on my TikTok FYP, which is kind of weird. But that was my major in college. That stuff's interesting to me. I still read some of that stuff now. I know, nerd alert. But so a lot of that's in my head, but also when I've had to examine a lot of the things that I do in auction drafting from a perspective of, okay, how do I explain this to people? I've realized that a lot of times people just go off and do things and they don't really know why they do them. And if you ask them after, they'd be like, oh, well, I XYZ. It's like, well, that's not really why you did it in the first place. And something that I've referenced on my show over the years is this book by a poker legend by the name of Mike Caro, who has this book of poker tells. And it's really interesting because it's not just about poker, although it is, but it's studying human behavior and human psychology. And I've come to realize that I was one of the biggest offenders of this, and I've gotten better about it in the last 5 years. doing things just off the cuff. Sometimes you just do weird things. And one of Mike Caro's things that he says is he calls it the law of loose wiring, that people will just do stuff sometimes and they don't even know why. And so you'll be playing poker and somebody will just do some random thing. And you're like, what the hell were you thinking? They weren't thinking. I got news for you. They weren't thinking. And so, and oftentimes, and of course, because the show's about auction drafting, I relate it back to that. People just do weird things, and they're going to do weird things, and they're going to do things that are against their interest. And that's one of the points that Mike Caro makes. People often do things that are not just off kilter or not even really like them, but they do things that are against their own interest, which is wild. Because how do you prepare for an auction draft when people are just going to go in there and spend $150 on 3 players, and you're like, okay, the rest of your guys are going to be $4, but that's against their interest. But so what? You got screwed out of a player because they kept bidding when they shouldn't have, but they did it anyway. And so you got to deal with that stuff. And so,
yeah,
this is a long answer. I'm sorry. I'm getting around to the point, but what it made me realize was I needed to tighten up my own game of auction drafting, but also tighten up my life a little bit about like, what am I doing here? And what are we supposed to be doing? I think it goes along a little bit with a midlife crisis. I'm approaching 50, and you think like, what are you doing every day? And what's the purpose of what we're doing? And I heard this TikTok the other day that was perfect. He was talking about, the old saying, you can't eat an elephant in one bite. You got to start somewhere and to accomplish it. And he said, but the most important thing is, yes, short-term positive things that you do can lead to long-term gains, but it doesn't happen automatically. I can't just go out there and be like, well, I ate a salad 3 times this week, but then eat 47 cookies the other days, because you're not actually intentional about being healthier. You just made a couple good decisions. Short-term gains, they don't lead to anything, right? I mean, you have to start somewhere, and so you have to start eating the elephant bite by bite, but you also have to do it the right way. You can't just say, I did these couple of things and now it's going to lead to a long-term gain. That's life itself only changes incrementally. And so when you're intentional and when you focus on a certain thing, then you get to those goals. Those long-term gains pop up out of nowhere from the short-term solutions, as long as you remain intentional about continuing down that path. Whew. Sorry.
No, that's a great answer. So,
yeah.
and you talk about hitting that midlife period. I just hit 50 this year. And one of the things that has really struck me is being more reflective and thinking about what I did. Like, not only being purposeful while you're doing it, but after you're done, to take a pause, look back, and think about what you did. For me, it happened mostly in the classroom. Whenever I would have a bad lesson, I would see lots of teachers blaming students. Like, this kid didn't pay, like all this went wrong. And in reality, what I discovered is that it was generally my weakest lessons caused the most disruptions in the classroom. So whenever I have a bad, misbehaving student, I reflect now and say, what did I do wrong? And one of the things I really like about your pod is that you spend the first episode or 2, or sometimes 3, reflecting on last year and the lessons you learned from last year. How has that reflection helped you in growing not only your podcast, but yourself as a fantasy manager?
Yeah, I think it's critical. And it's one of those things where I think people have a tendency to say, it's 2025, that stuff's not going to apply. And I just think that couldn't be further from the truth. We can always learn something. And, I believe that it might have been John Hanson. I can't remember exactly. I think it was, who used to send out an email after the end of the season and say, these are the things I think I learned this year.
Yeah.
And I started thinking like, gosh, I really like this idea. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized like that was more of an auction specific thing, because you could get in a snake and be like, I should have picked that guy instead of that guy. But there was really not like a lot you could do with the pool you had in front of you. But for auctions, it's all about like, boy, at that one moment, I made this decision not to bid, and my auction went off the rails from there. And so those are the things, that introspection, it's hard. And it's something that I preach about on my show all the time, because I realize that it requires you to be brutally honest with yourself. And that's difficult. And not everybody has that. And that's something that I'm hoping like really to teach my kids. Like, they do things and they constantly have this outward projection of what else the world is doing to them. I'm like, no, hold on. You did this first. That's why you're here. And that kind of stuff, like that has sunk in more and more as I've had to evaluate myself. The show is doing a lot of that for me too, because I make myself go through these things before I get on the air. And it's forced me to do that. I actually, I like this part of it. It's hard to go on and say to everybody, I made all these mistakes. Like that's difficult to do because you make a ton of mistakes as a fantasy analyst. And it's really hard to be out there and be like, yeah, I told people I was wary of Josh Jacobs last year. That's tough. That's really hard to do. So I tell people all the time, be very, just be brutal with yourself about looking in and seeing, I coach one quick anecdote. I coached my son's soccer team. And last year was the first time that I'd coached a team it was the most skilled group of players I've ever coached because I coached him coming up in like recreational leagues. And I could get my recreational leagues to just make leaps and bounds from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. And I would see how much better they were by the end of the year. Last year is the first time I ever coached a bunch of kids that were sort of, they already had the skills and they needed more. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great because I played at a high level when I was younger. I can teach these kids all the theory of soccer and all that stuff. It didn't work very well. I don't feel like we got a lot better as the year went on, like maybe a little bit. And I'm very critical of myself. So, some people have said to me, hey, you did a better job than you think. But I just kept thinking, like, why aren't we taking these big leaps? And I kept saying, the kids are this and the kids are tired and the kids are the kids and the kids. And I said, wait a minute. It's probably you, dude. Like you're doing something wrong. You're doing something, you're not relating to them in some way that's helping them to grow. So what's your problem? And I spent the whole off season just like watching videos and watching coaching videos and just like saving them on my phone. Like I need to remember this. I need to remember that because I'm not going back to this team and seeing the same team at the end of the season again. That stuff's frustrating as hell to me. And that's part of what I say on my show is like, doesn't that bug you? If like you go and you get killed in an auction, you just go, oh, wow, next year. Like, no, like go back and figure out why you got killed. Wouldn't that bug you? Isn't that something you want for your life?
Yeah. Doug?
Something I'll just add. I think I can't say much better than you, but something I try to remember in my life is, and I think it relates, is I don't care that whatever the right answer in the universe is, I don't care if I'm the one that comes up with it. I care about getting to the right answer, right? I don't need the credit for being right. I want to get to the right answer. I would call that lack of, I don't know if it's a lack of pride or just a lot of self-awareness, but that's kind of the point. I don't care that I get the credit for it. I care that we answer the question and we move on to the next question, right?
I love it. Colin Coward is somebody that people love to hate, but he's a super smart dude. And he always says it. He says, guys, when it comes to sports, they just want to be right about everything instead of actually getting it right. And I love that point, Doug, because I feel the same way. Like, I don't care if I was wrong. I want to figure out why I was wrong, and I want to get to what is right. And then I can kind of like deconstruct it backwards. Like, how should we have gotten to that answer?
Because just what you were saying, I know some of the worst seasons I've had. Now, granted, I haven't had that many bad seasons, and that's not a pat on the back. Let's just say I haven't had a lot of bad seasons. But the bad seasons of the less profitable seasons, so put it that way, the less profitable seasons, least profitable seasons I've had, I spend all off season, what the hell went wrong? That's not right. I have a standard that I need to meet, and I didn't meet it this year. So I like what you're saying.
Love it, man. It's frustrating. And the people who care will spend that time. And that's why, the show's probably not ever going, my show's probably not ever going to be huge, because I think there's a subset of people that don't want to listen, don't want to hear what I have to say. They're just like, yeah, no, I want to talk about 2025. I'm like, well, your success this year depends on what you learned last year. So, and yeah, let's talk surfing. I'm down.
Yeah. RC says hello. And all right. I'm, of course, I've talked to you, Drew. I'm doing terrible this year in the surfing league. Who is your favorite surfer, male or female, right now?
Well, I tell you what, right now on the tour, we're missing some big guys. We're missing Gabriel Medina and John Florence, but John Florence is easily my best, my favorite surfer. Kelly will always be my, all time. He's the guy that brought me to the sport. Kelly Slater's just, he's one of the best competitive athletes the planet's ever known. But John Florence right now he posted a video, like basically he's sailing around the world with his wife and his new baby. And he posts these random videos. He's got a videographer with him where he just finds these random waves around the world. He just pulls into a bay and there's a wave and he goes out and he gets on it. He's like, oh, I found this, crappy little windy left. And then he pulls off this huge air. And I'm like, crappy little wave. John Florence is ripping it up. So he's easily my favorite surfer.
All right. Well, I enjoyed the league much more last year than this year, but I'm bouncing back. I was bad.
You had
the
two
first
good
few
events
weeks.
in a row.
I have. I've been trying to find that balance between knowing too much for me, and just guessing like I did last year. So trying to find that happy
Doug,
medium.
Well, talk about going full circle here. That's what Drew and I were just talking about, and JJ's already learning from his mistakes. So good for you.
If I learned from my mistakes, Doug, why would I come back here every single week? All right, gentlemen.
I'm your favorite mistake, JJ. That's why.
Shout out to Carla in the chat. Can't wait for August, you guys. What day are you getting there?
Thursday morning.
Yes.
Yeah, probably Thursday afternoon here. We're gonna do the first half of the journey on Wednesday night. So probably Thursday afternoon.
What about you?
You got there real late Thursday night last year, I think. Didn't you, Doug?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were pretty late. No, I'll be the problem is I got court that day, unfortunately, and I was dumb. I scheduled my family vacation the week before, so I'm going to come back, and I don't want to ask for coverage again that Thursday. So I'm going to work the first 4 days in court, and then I'm going to leave after court. So I might not make it till dinner time, but I'm aiming to be there by dinner so that I can go out and see everybody that night.
Well, I'll let you know where we end up.
Absolutely. I'm trying to be there by 5, 6 o'clock. I think I can do it.
Yeah, that's the target here too. Somewhere in there. Yep. Awesome.
Well, I believe in you. I believe in you, Drew. All right. Before we get to the topic, Jody Smith and the team at Full Time Fantasy have done the heavy lifting once again. The 36th edition of the Pro Forecast magazine is on the shelves. It's packed with expert analysis, ranking, and draft strategies. It's your blueprint for dominating fantasy football in 2025. So be sure to tune in all summer long for your chance to win a free copy and crush your competition. All right, gentlemen, with draft season underway, I wanted to focus tonight on the kind of on-the-clock decisions that we'll all be facing, unless you're doing an auction. I pulled a list of player pairings, same position, but going within 1 to 4 picks of each other in ADP. Our job is to make the case for who you take and why. If you disagree, don't worry, I'll be the tiebreaker. So we're going to try this out. I didn't let the gentlemen prep at all by telling them the pairings. So I don't know. Let's just see what happens here. So first up, we're starting with a banger. So maybe the most distasteful of all the pairings. We have Anthony Richardson versus Daniel Jones. AR is going off the board at 187 and DJ at 189. QB's 29 and 30. So, Drew, you're staring down the barrel at that choice. Who do you go with and why?
This is quite distasteful. I will say, though, that for me, it's fairly easy for me. It's Daniel Jones. I'm not saying that I understand what Anthony Richardson brings to the table. I get what is so alluring about him. I've been drawn in myself the last couple of years, but I'm just over it. And I've watched too much of the inaccuracy. And one of the things that, like, I had some tweet go viral. It was really weird, but I was sitting there on a Sunday and I videoed one of his throws. It was a simple little flare that he should have, it's a little layup. He hits the receiver. If you hit him in the hands, he runs upfield, he gets 5 or 6 yards. I mean, he just airmailed that thing, and it just wasn't even close. Now, this is a throw that my 10-year-old could make. And I understand that he's got this immense fantasy upside, but I just don't think he can run an NFL offense for a long period of time. And I think that the coaching is good enough that Daniel Jones can have success. And let's not forget that he's had fantasy success in the past when he's been allowed to use his legs and has had a reasonably competent coaching staff. So Daniel Jones is my pick.
Doug?
Yeah, I'm going to side with Your Honor here as well. I'll probably forget the rest of the time, so I'll get that in there now. With there being such a slight difference, I mean, I think Daniel Jones is going to win the quarterback competition, whatever competition there is this summer. Much like Drew already said, we've seen Daniel Jones be productive, be accurate on some level. The case I would make for Anthony Richardson, which is not much of one, is he worked with the same biometrics expert that helped Josh Allen get going after his first couple of years in the league. He did that this spring. If you want to hold out some hope for Richardson, go ahead. But kind of like Drew said, I don't see where it's ever going to be a situation where Richardson drops back 35 times, completes 26 of them, and he's nailing the short passes. He's nailing we know he can nail the deep passes, but if you're going to matriculate the ball down the field, you're going to have to hit your fair share of short passes, and that's now what Indianapolis has. They have a bunch of good short to intermediate range targets: Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, Tyler Warren. So I think at their core, they want to be centered around Jonathan Taylor. But my point being is that I think Daniel Jones helps make that happen more so than Anthony Richardson probably will this year or maybe ever.
All right. Next up, the big dogs are battling at the top of the QB rankings. We have Hurts versus not Herbert, if you've been on X this week, but Hurts versus Joe Burrow. Hurts is being drafted at pick 40, with Burrow right on his tail at pick 43. Drew, who do you go with?
Well, I'm going to give a shout out to the late round QB himself. I got a hold of his draft guide and was reading some stuff about his quarterback strategy, and he went through some history on this kind of stuff. I don't think it's comparable when you consider what has to happen for a pocket passer in 4-point passing touchdown leagues to be that valuable. So you just can't count on the production, the high touchdown rate, and Burrow's season, however good it may be. And look, he may be in that same position this year. That defense is going to be pretty bad. So maybe he's in the same position this year. But it takes a lot of things lining up between health and bad defense and touchdowns going in the red zone instead of rushing, that kind of stuff. It all just takes a lot to line up for a pocket passer to have those outlier seasons. They will happen, and they're going to happen. It's just I'm not betting on it happening. I'd rather go for the guy that has the rushing production, and so it's Hurts for me, and that's not because I don't think Burrow can do it again. It's just that if I have to bet, I'm betting on the guy who's got the production on the ground.
Doug, do you concur?
I do, and I'll try to make this fairly short and sweet. So, what Burrow went for almost 5,000 yards passing last year and 40+ touchdowns. Did he not? Something like 4,943 or something like that. And he finishes the QB3. Does he have the weapons to repeat that and the bad defense to help that happen? Absolutely, he has that. But let me see where Hurts was. And Hurts had an off year. He was QB6. Do we expect? Everybody hates to hear tush pushes, but that's going to continue this year. I think we can probably pencil him in for at least 10 rushing touchdowns, probably more like 12, 13, 15. In an off year where they didn't pass the ball that much, he was the QB6. That's probably his floor in that offense. Any improvement in terms of passing attempts, I think I'm not going to forecast the QB1. I think that's Lamar Jackson again this year, but would not surprise me if Hurts ends up being a discount QB2 in the overall scheme of things. Would not surprise me at all.
Can I just interject? That's a great point about last year's passing numbers, because we always talk about regression when we talk about that guy can't score that many touchdowns again this year. But, it works the other way too. Like Hurts could have, if we give him a 10, 15, 20% little bump in passing, boy, he could really explode. So I love the point, Doug.
And it sounds like that's what they want to do under the new offense coordinator there is Kevin Patullo. Whether that means, and the thing I want to drive home when we're talking about maybe run pass balance or run heavy versus pass heavy or whatever, sometimes the difference between run heavy and pass heavy is changing 5 1 year to the 5 the next year. So a quarterback that attempts 25 throws a game 1 year, that's run heavy. Then we change 5 plays a game, and now he's throwing 28, 30 times. That's probably not the best example in terms of numbers, but now all of a sudden we went from run heavy to balanced. Now if the averages bump up more than that, now we're getting 32, 35. Now we're pass heavy. So and defense, the quality of defense is changing from 1 year to the next can affect that as well. But my point being is sometimes we get lost in it's run heavy, balanced, and pass heavy when all that really changes. That is a coach's decision to call 5 of one thing more than he did per game last year. Does that make sense?
For sure.
It's a fine line. Fine line. So our final quarterback pairing, it's a battle of the Chicago QBs. Current QB, Caleb Williams, is going off the board at pick 95, followed by former Bears, current Jets QB, Justin Fields at 96. Drew, who are you taking between those two players?
Well, curse you for making me make this decision, because in auction drafts, I'm trying to pair these two guys up. I'm trying to pair up Fields and Caleb, or Fields and May, something like that, because I think I can get both of them for less than $10. And I think if I'm going to be able to, I'm all about it. So, this is tough. I'm ever so slightly going to give the nod to Caleb Williams. And that's weird coming out of my mouth, because honestly, if you ask me, who would you pay more for in an auction, I'd rather pay more for Fields. But I'm concerned enough, if I have to pick one, I'm concerned enough that we get to week 7 or 8 or 9 and Fields is just falling apart. Now, I think that he has the ability to do it for a full season. And I've said this before, I think he's probably got a longer leash than he would in another situation where there's somebody on the bench who actually matters. But Jim Coventry made the point on my show this week, what are they going to do? Put in Tyrod Taylor? This isn't a situation where you've got a third-round rookie chilling on the bench and they're 4-11 and Fields gets yanked at the worst possible time. So I do think Fields is going to get the chance to ride it out. But I really want to see what Ben Johnson does, and I'm betting on Johnson with that group of weapons. Caleb Williams showed flashes of, just incredible upside in several different games last year. And it's very weird because his up and down, if you go look at PFF's fantasy finishes, their top 5 fantasy finishes, he had I think 4 top 5 fantasy finishes. But then all these other games, he just was 38 or, 29 or just horrendous for the week. So he has that upside. And I'm hoping that if they shored up the interior of the line and they've got some play calling where they can stack some similar looks on top of each other, that Williams is going to get the benefit of that and get some more layups. And I hope that makes him, we tend to forget too that he's got some rushing ability as well. So it's slight for me if I had to pick, but hey, all you auction folks, just go get both of them. I cheated.
I love that. It's okay. Doug?
I won't be able to cheat. JJ won't let me cheat. I know he won't.
Nope, it's against the rules.
Yeah. So I think that Fields will be the perfect QB2, and so, but like Drew kind of hinted, if not just outright suggested, I do worry about him holding up for a season. That's why I want that upside as my QB2. I'm going to ever so slightly lean toward Caleb Williams here. And this is going to sound ridiculous because it's just, we're just talking counting numbers here. I think Caleb Williams' touchdown interception ratio was up 20-6 last year. Now, I want everybody to remember how bad it was, how bad the offensive environment was outside the receivers in Chicago last year. Shane Waldron he's proven how incompetent he is. And I don't usually get that strong with the play calling, but JJ, you and I talked about it on the show last year. We showed examples. Incompetence. And he showed it in Seattle when he was up there too. So if we're talking now, as Drew said, you bring in Ben Johnson. If you can go 20-6 on the touchdown interception ratio in a bad offense, or at least a poorly designed, poorly protected offense, now you're giving me more weapons. You're giving me a guy who not only understands what plays to call, but when to call them.
It's like going from the outhouse to the penthouse of OCs.
It's ever so slightly, because I think we talked on the show here last week or 2 weeks ago about Fields having potential 1,000-yard rushing upside. That means a hell of a lot in fantasy football. But as, again, Drew said, we're talking Williams ran for 400-plus yards, so he's certainly – we saw his – I don't know if that's his rushing upside, but certainly we saw that he can move a little bit. And anybody who watched him in college knew he already could run. But I mean, he actually gave us 4 to almost 500 yards rushing last year. So he's certainly not Joe Burrow compared to Lamar Jackson type of thing. So I think we're looking at a potential of 4,000 plus passing yards, 30 touchdowns passing, and I'm not sure that Fields is going to make some of that up through his rushing totals, but I don't think he gets anywhere close in the touchdown department.
All right, well, let's go over to the running backs. First up, we have 2 backups who are trying to usurp the starters. We have Cam Scatteraboo at pick 108, followed by Zach Charbonnet at pick 109. Drew.
Wow.
You went 0 RB. So who are you trying to grab here?
That's pretty zero-y. Yeah.
Less than 0?
Yes.
Nice.
So I'm going to be one of those few people who's just pretty much out on Cam. He doesn't have – I've heard enough from people who are smart about rookie stuff that I don't think he has the profile that projects to be a long-term NFL starter or player, period. I think this kind of player from college doesn't translate well to the NFL. Having said that, I also think that situation in New York is such a mess. Not as if Charbonnet's not sitting behind somebody. I get that, but I feel like New York has this weird kind of 3-man committee that could emerge. I don't exactly know, but I just don't think he's going to stand out that much. Whereas Charbonnet, I felt like when I watched him the couple of times last year, when he got a chance to touch the ball, and there were even moments when Walker was ostensibly healthy, that Charbonnet was pounding the rock. I worry a little bit about his receiving profile or lack thereof, but I still think he's a really strong runner who's going to get a chance to touch the ball this year. And Ken Walker hasn't been the healthiest guy. So it's Charbonnet, and it's pretty easy for me.
Doug, I know you're a Kenneth Walker fan, but which way do you fall in this?
Yeah, I think just in the time Drew was talking, my mind changed maybe 2 or 3 times. But again, difficult call here. And the thing that I'm going to settle on is at this point in the draft, we're talking now about the 9th round. We're talking pick 108 versus 109. 9th round. Now I want upside. I want contingent upside. I want upside with my running backs in particular. Okay, let's say Devin Singletary gets hurt or Tyrone Tracy gets hurt. It's still going to be a 2-man backfield. And I like what Drew was saying. I know we talked about it during the draft shows, JJ, that we like Scatteraboo's game in terms of what he can do, but there's the explosiveness isn't there. I mean, he has the all-purpose ability, but if you're wanting more than 5 and 8 yard runs on a regular basis, then and that's going to be hard. That's going to be hard for a coaching staff to say, okay, we'll just settle for 5-8 yards at a time, and then when we want a big play, we'll bring in Tyrone Tracy or whatever the case may be. And now, as regarding Charbonnet, now I don't think that there might be more than 4 or 5 weeks where you're going to really use Charbonnet. I don't see. I think they're going to want to commit to Kenneth Walker, and yes, so I'm definitely remaining firmly in Walker's corner. I don't think it's going to be much of an emphasis when he's healthy that they get Charbonnet involved. With that said, we've also seen when Walker gets hurt, it's the Charbonnet show. Now I think they brought in Damian Martinez. I think it's going to be more split between Damian Martinez and Charbonnet if and when Kenneth Walker gets hurt again. But just the upside. Who are we going to put in as RB2 if Tyrone Tracy gets hurt, and Kenneth Walker gets hurt at the same time? Who are we putting in as RB2? We're putting in Charbonnet. Yeah.
All right. You guys are agreeing, which I guess is a good thing. Now, this next matchup would never happen in boxing because of the dichotomous body types. At heavyweight, going at pick 13 is King Henry, 6'3", 247. Following him, in the other corner, we have lightweight at 5'9", 185, Devon Achan at pick 15.
What were the picks again? Achan at 15? 13. Okay.
Henry's at 13. Achan is at 15.
Wow. I'll tell you what.
Drew, just out of principle, I'm going to disagree with you so we can at least have one disagreement.
Yeah, let's do that. Actually, why don't you go first, and then I'll have to say as Doug said. And as
boy. Okay.
You got to do it, man. You're on the clock.
Come on, Doug.
Nope, I got you.
Beep.
All right.
Beep.
So
Beep. Beep.
yeah, I'm changing my mind as we're talking here. I'm changing my mind as we're talking here. I'm going to go Derrick Henry. And I know I shouldn't because we're looking at HN having anywhere from 80 to 100 catch upside. And if you think I'm kidding about that, well, let's talk about Jonnu Smith not being there anymore. We just shrunk that target pie now to Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and HN. If you think Darren Waller is going to go for more than 50 catches, be my guest. Draft him. Have fun with that. And I don't think Jalen Wright's going to attract a lot of catches either. So we're looking at pretty much 3 guys who probably could draw a 20% target share. I don't think that's overshooting it at all. Anyway, so I understand what I'm saying when I'm going with Henry. Now, short of having that kind of PPR volume in your hip pocket, what do I love the most for my running backs is when you have the stud that is Derrick Henry, and you have an even more of a stud run threat next to him in the backfield. I don't think it's overshooting it to say that he could repeat last year. If you think about what Henry did last year, he actually Todd Monken didn't use him very well in at least 2 or 3 games. And as early in the season, it was kind of a slow start for Derrick Henry for those people that had him on multiple rosters, and it was kind of frustrating actually. It wasn't until that Dallas game, I think in week 3, where okay, here we go, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. This is what I drafted in the 3rd round for. So I think Monken gets it now. I think it's going to be a steady dose of Derrick Henry whenever possible. And I hate to say repeat last year. I honestly think he can beat last year if we're being honest. So either one of these guys I think has overall RB1 upside, but I'm going to go with the fickle beast that is all the touchdown scoring, and I think it's possible that he repeats last year in that regard and finishes probably as the RB3, RB5, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Drew, do you object?
Man, I wish I could. So as soon as Jonnu Smith got traded, I told myself I'm just going to have HN everywhere. But, the more I think about this team, the more nervous I've gotten about the Miami Dolphins in general over the past couple of weeks. I just think that the offensive line is trash. I think that the defense has the ability to tank this year as well. Maybe that's going to help HN. I don't know. But what I'm saying is I think that overall the team is in danger of just imploding altogether. That has me concerned enough that maybe, Tua doesn't make it through the year, or we have I always have these uneasy feelings about teams. And I'm like, oh, but what's going to happen? He's still going to do this, or he's still going to do that. Then you get in the season, and it was nothing you could dream up. Like there's no scenario that you could be like, well, that happened. But then it happens, and you're like, oh, well, that was what I was worried about. I just couldn't put the name to it. And so I think that could happen for Miami. I don't know, Tua gets benched, or Tua gets, they lose confidence in week 5, and then all of a sudden I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm saying weird stuff feels weird, and Miami feels weird, right? I mean, you can't sit there and be like, Miami doesn't feel weird. We don't know what the hell we're going to get from Tyreek. Jonnu's gone. The offensive line took a hit that couldn't afford to take a hit. I just think it's weird. So I am nervous as hell about Achane, and I think his draft stock says that other people are too. So that's not that crazy. But, I have to balance how I feel about Achane and Miami versus how I feel about the fact that at some point Derrick Henry's going to break down. I've been saying that for a couple years now, though, and I'm an idiot. So I can't make that argument with good conscience anymore. At some point, it's going to happen, but I don't care. I'm going with King Henry. And I will say this, the lack of receiving upside is a problem. But if there is any guy who could ever short circuit that issue by saying we can rely on the touchdowns, I think he's one of the most reliable when it comes to touchdowns. So I'm fine with it. Henry's my pick.
There will come a day where Derrick Henry does not perform, but today is not that day.
I hope not.
Today is not that day.
And if I can add,
I can add,
yes, please.
Mike McDaniel, if they start off bad, Mike McDaniel might be an in-season coaching fire.
Yep.
Like I would not be surprised at all if that would happen. Sorry, Doug.
No. You needed to add that. Thank you. I was just going to say, sometimes I think in fantasy we can be guilty of mixing correlation and causation. And I don't know if you mentioned it. I didn't hear you mention Tua's injury history, whatnot. We saw it last year, man, and I think this is causation. So when Tua's not there, the offense stinks. And when the offense stinks, and when Tua's not there, the checkdowns and all the targets that Achane was seeing dwindled. I'm gonna do an article here in the next couple of weeks for FF Today that basically broke down Achane, or the entire offense's splits with and without Tua, and to say it's going to confirm everything you thought about Achane and everybody else, but specifically to what we're talking about here. If Tua misses games again, then you're looking at an RB2 flex and not the RB1 that you were hoping at pick 15.
Yeah, and let me just say real quick, the beginning of their schedule, they have the Colts and the Pats, which, hey, that could be great. They could be 2-0 after that. They get Buffalo, which should be a loss, and then the Jets and Carolina. They could start out and they could look all right. But the other side, the doomsday scenario is, what if they lose several of those games against teams they should beat? Then what JJ says comes to pass. Mike McDaniel's gone. Who knows how many balls they're going to throw to Achane? Maybe they decide that they're not going to do that anymore. And then the guy you drafted for the 70 catches suddenly ends up with 41, and you'd much rather be looking at Henry every week.
Last thing I promised before we move on here. Achane was terrible in inside the 10 conversion rate, and I understand when you're trying to account for touchdown or trying to score touchdowns for the 10, that's not the easiest thing in the world. But I think Achane was somewhere around 16-17% last year, which is not the greatest number by any stretch. So I think there is a distinct possibility that Jalen Wright, maybe Ollie Gordon, comes in and steals some of those touchdowns that we would have otherwise expected Achane to get in the red zone, in the close red zone.
All right, gentlemen, before you say one more thing, our last running back pairing, if you had told me 2 years ago that Kyren Williams would be drafted ahead of Breece Hall, I would have laughed. Now I want to cry. Kyren is being drafted at pick 30. That's his ADP, with Breece right behind at 33.
Jeez.
Ooh. Well, I'll tell you what. When people talk about wide receivers earn targets. I get all that. But running backs, it's all about volume. I've been saying this for 2 years now. I said it for the first time on my Patreon like a year and a half ago when everybody was like, sell Kyren. And I said, folks, just take the fantasy points. Like, just stick them in your lineup and take the points and like stop worrying so much about the nonsense that everyone says, sell high. I understand you got to do that sometimes, but this is a repeatable situation. And I think Kyren Williams proved it's a repeatable situation by going out and repeating it, right? Like he did it. Like, what are we doing here? I'm so frustrated by the Kyren Williams thing. I just tweeted this out yesterday. This needs to be studied in a lab. Like, why the hell is everyone hate Kyren Williams so much? And I love Breece Hall as far as talent goes. The guy's an electric player. I think that he was stymied by just a horrendous situation there. I don't know how much better it's gotten, and I still believe in Breece Hall, but no way am I taking that situation versus Kyren's situation. And I think that's all that matters for these two players, and it's a lot of what matters for most fantasy running backs. You don't have to say that about every position, but for running backs, that environment, I want the environment in Los Angeles.
Doug?
Shockingly, Your Honor makes a compelling case. I so much wanted to go Breece here because I want to get some variation into our answers. Man, and
nah.
I'm going to go Kyren by the slightest of hairs here. Drew talks about the offensive environment. I'll put it this way. I'll express both concerns. I'll take Kyren, but I'll express the concerns on both ends because I think Drew already kind of laid out the positives and some of the negatives. Okay, what do we think's happening in LA? Why was Sean McVay so thrilled to bring in Jarquez Hunter? I think if you can answer that question, if you can answer why Blake Corum looked good but didn't. He looked good to me last year, but he didn't play that much. Okay, does that continue? There's no reason to believe it won't. But why bring in Jarquez Hunter? I think because he offers more big playability. I don't know, but I'm going to guess that's why he was drafted. With that said, now we have a pretty long track record on Sean McVay and his running backs. He likes to feed one guy. There's been some years where that we could argue if that's been the case, but for the most part, if he has one guy he likes, he rides him. I think now with the Jets, I could see that offense running 500 plus times. And I think Fields will probably get anywhere from, 120, 140 of those carries. Now, we talked about we had a show with Jim Coventry here a couple weeks ago, and I remember one of my jobs is posting fantasy blurbs for the Huddle and USA Today. And so I stumbled upon this a couple weeks ago where Breece Hall spoke in front of reporters, and he said that he had a knee thing that bothered him all last year, and it was not related to the ACL that he tore. I think it was a couple of years ago by now. Breece Hall, when healthy, is hands down the best running back in that Jets backfield. The most dynamic, the best running back in that backfield. But there is more of a threat. I think there is more of a threat of losing work to Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen than Kyren has to lose touches to Jarquez Hunter and Blake Corum. So, long way of saying I understand why Kyren's going ahead. And if I was to have to make this decision 10 times, I would probably go 5-5. So there you go.
That was a long way of eating. Yes.
I object. Hearsay.
Well,
none of that is true.
Continuance. Continue.
I'll grant any continuance. I don't want to do it today. I also want to add that a couple picks ago, when the clock ran out on Doug's pick, he wasn't allowed to take either guy. He got auto-selected, and he didn't have a queue, so he got Kaimi Fairbairn. So
nice.
Sorry,
nice. That's his favorite kicker, though. That's his 101.
Yeah. Thanks.
Sorry, you got Joey Sly. My bad.
Oh.
Got to set up a queue, bro. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah,
Got to do it. Got to do it. Well, gentlemen, let's be honest. Dynasty leagues are where the real fantasy legends are made. Redraft is fun, sure, but Dynasty, that's for the diehards. The Dynasty Football World Championships are back for their 13th season, and this is your chance to build your squad from the ground up and chase the crown. Whether you're a savvy vet or a startup junkie, there's a league waiting for you. Drafts start at just $75 with higher stakes options available. Visit dynastyking.com and search for the Dynasty Football World Championship. Your Dynasty glory starts today. All right, gentlemen, let's go over to the wide receivers. We're going to start off with a battle of the number twos. George Pickens' ADP is 59. He's facing off against the bilateral rookie Travis Hunter at pick 60. So who are we going with, Drew? Pickens or Hunter?
I am somebody who does not like George Pickens, and yet he's my choice. I know that's weird. I am not a George Pickens guy. When you do dumb stuff like he does consistently, I just think that's who you are. And I'll shout out Colin Cowherd again. I don't know why it's popping into my head, but he had that whole theory about if you have a wear a backwards hat as a quarterback, you're immature and all this. Like maybe that's a bit of an extreme take and kind of dumb on its face, but he has a point. And he used to make the point about Dak Prescott when he saw him on the sideline and say somebody would throw a cup at the trash can and it wouldn't go in, and Prescott would pick it up and put it in the trash. I'm sorry, but I agree with Collins. This stuff matters. And Pickens is a problem. I realize I'm picking him and then I'm making the case against him, but he's a problem. I can't wait to see what happens the first time CeeDee Lamb has 13 targets and they lose and Pickens has 4. What's he going to say in the locker room? And anybody who's been in a locker room over their lifetime, a sports locker room, what that does. The erosion of that locker room, the erosion of how people feel in the locker room, it's all very real. And I worry about George Pickens. Having said that, the case for him in my mind is pretty simple. I don't trust that Travis Hunter is going to get enough snaps on offense. And I also don't trust that opposite Brian Thomas, he's going to command enough targets for me to care about taking him where he's being drafted. It's not that I don't like Hunter. I just don't like where he's being drafted. So that's mainly a value issue for me. But also, if you pay attention to the guy who's been opposite CeeDee Lamb the past few years, there is room there. There's room for somebody there. And Dak, if Dak is healthy, assuming he's healthy, I think it could easily unlock that because he's a good enough quarterback that while he knows that his bread is buttered by throwing the ball to CeeDee Lamb, I also think he's good enough where he's going to say, hey, this is easy. I can throw this ball to Pickens, and this is easy when people have, 3 guys on Lamb. So I think it's Pickens for me. But I'm anti-Travis Hunter. You picked 2 good guys there because I'm pretty anti both of them. But Pickens is my choice.
Doug?
So I think I can make this a fairly short argument here. I'm gonna agree with Drew for slightly different reasons here. Pickens isn't now where Amari Cooper was when he was with the Cowboys a few years ago, but I think that's essentially the role he's going to play. And if we remember what Cooper did back then, I think it was roughly 80 catches, 10 to 1,100 yards, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I don't think he gets quite there, but my point is still the same. He's a number one he's a guy that's used to be number one who's now going to be number 2. That means something. If you can with your rose-colored glasses say that Hunter is capable of 70 to 80 catches, 1,000 yards, and 6 to 8 touchdowns, playing both sides. So we're talking about the physical fatigue. I did a blurb today talking about this, that Greg Cosell, you guys know Greg Cosell. He was talking about how Liam Cohen's offense is so expansive. Okay, now we're talking about Travis Hunter, who had a hard time staying healthy during a college season. I think he did most of last year. I think he stepped out of a game or 2 early, but I think he played every game last year. Prior to that, he had trouble staying healthy. Okay, that was college. We know college is considerably different than the pros, more physical, so on and so forth. We're talking about simplistic offenses and simplistic defenses in college versus what I just kind of alluded to in the pros. So I'm going to be anti-Hunt here because I don't think A, he's going to hold up, and B, I don't think with his head swimming that he's going to be able, if he's going to contribute offensively consistently, I don't know how he does that until November or December. Well, by that time, I would expect Pickens to be 20, 30 catches ahead and 400 or 500 yards ahead. So anyway, I won't say it's easy here. I would say this is one of the easier ones of the 7 that we've done so far. For me, I would go Pickens, and I don't like him either. So
yeah, it's a big if. If Pickens doesn't nuke his situation, he should easily win that matchup. It's a big if. All right, gentlemen. Now we have another 2 players in different weight classes. We have the imposing A.J. Brown at pick 18, facing off against the sprightly upstart Ladd McConkey at 20. Doug, who are you going with?
Yeah. I'll get it. I'll get it. This one's
going double kicker, Drew. Double kicker.
This one's going to be.
Oh, you got Evan McPherson.
2 kickers. What a rookie mistake.
Well, you need a backup.
You got bye weeks, man. Come on.
Well, hey, I'll tell your story here, Drew, real quick. You know the auction story. How about how the guy gets Brady or Manning for 40 50 the auction? Yeah, that's what I'm doing with my kickers.
Hey, bye week, bitches. All right. All right, sorry, I stepped all over you, McConkey. Go for it.
No. I was hoping you would say that. So I'm going to go with McConkey here. I think it would be a mistake for me to assume that after all these years that offense coordinator Greg Roman's going to go pass heavy. I don't think he ever will, but I think they're going to be as balanced of an offense as he's ever coordinated. And McConkey's already proven McConkey's more than just a slot wonder. Okay, he wins. He wins inside and outside. He wins basically every kind of route that you could hope for. And I know both of these guys are going to be the alpha dog in their offense, but I just think there's going to be more volume. I think there's going to be more consistent volume from McConkey. And it's hard to get that last season's playoff game out of my head. You know, the one where they lost to Houston, where he just went off. And Houston's got a good pass defense. So anyway, I think he builds on that, and then you bring in Trey Harris, you bring back Mike Williams. You have more vertical threat than they did last year. So in theory, you should be able to open up the middle of the field a little bit more for McConkey. So I'd be surprised if he doesn't edge past what he did last year. I don't know. I don't remember where he finished, but there was a threat with A.J. Brown that offense remains somewhat run heavy. He also missed 4 games last year. I do wonder if he's going to start breaking down in terms of breaking down physically here pretty soon. But I have less concerns with that with McConkey, so that's just another feather in his hat. So McConkey for me.
Drew?
Folks, it's a momentous moment on this show. I'm going to disagree with Doug. I mean, I don't know. This may be I think that one of the things that you said that I like the most is that Greg Roman just is who he is. And we know that. But that also doesn't mean there can't be an efficiency bump for McConkey as well. And I'm going to just go on record as saying, again, McConkey, one of my misses last year, and one of the guys that I just didn't think could hold up over a full season. He had never really produced the kind of numbers. He had the best yardage season, I think, in the NFL. He had a better yardage season than he ever had in college, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
If I'm not wrong about that. But, he had 900 or 800 yards or something in college as his top number. So I love McConkey. I really think that he's an exciting player that I don't want to leave this summer without having some of McConkey on my teams. Having said that, I think AJ Brown is still an elite producer, and I think he's just being held back, as you said, Doug, by the offense. So what I do in those situations is I just defer to the guy who I think AJ Brown, somebody referred to him on Twitter as an alien. And I just think that's what he is. He's just this unbelievable specimen who wins anytime you ask him to win. I think somebody said that he's never had a yards per route run below 2.5 in his career. That is absurd. That's an absurd stat. And I think if we get a little lucky with AJ Brown, this is the most discounted AJ Brown we've had in a couple of years. So if we get a little lucky with a little extra pass volume and he plays 13, 14 games, I'm going to want all of that. So Brown's my pick.
All right. Love that. Oh, wait. I finally get to be the judge. It's AJ Brown. I'm never going to agree with Doug. I mean AJ Brown put up almost his rookie year. He put up over 1,000 yards on 50 catches. Like, you're right. He's an alien. And they better start figuring out how to use him. But he reads that book on the sideline, so he's fine. All right. Next up, our last wide receiver matchup should be settled on the basketball court because we have two towering players. Pick 116, we have Keon Coleman. And right after him at 117 is Jaden Higgins. Yeah.
Eesh.
Drew.
Okay. Oh, boy. All right. So you could fill a thimble with what I know about Jaden Higgins. All right. So I want everyone to understand that. I've read what people say about him, and I know what people who are in the know think. I personally don't know what the hell I think about Jaden Higgins. I'm listening to smarter people than I am. I think there's a real shot there for him to carve out a role this year, but I'm absolutely not. I can't sit here and say that I have confidence in that. So I can't take Higgins, and I'm blanking. I'm sorry. The other one was
Keon Coleman.
Yeah, Coleman. I'm not a huge Coleman guy myself, so this is probably a good litmus test. But I think you got to give a second-year receiver with Josh Allen the chance. He flashed last year, and I think part of the problem was at the end of the season he was battling a little bit of an injury, and for rookies, those things just become part of how they figure out how to be NFL wide receivers, how they figure out how to be pros. And I hope he learned a lot last year, and I hope that helps him. But they need somebody to step up as an alpha, and I hope that he can do it. I'm not here saying I'm confident he can do it, but I hope that he can do it. I'm absolutely going to take this second-year receiver with Josh Allen over an unknown like Higgins. So, yeah, Coleman's my pick.
Doug, before we get to you, King Groob says that A.J. Brown has higher upside if Philly is forced into more passing situations for any reason. Barkley injury, stronger strength of schedule. King Rubes, you're a king for a reason. Good. Oh, wait.
Did you see this comment?
Drew, can you give tips on getting 8 full hours of sleep each night and sticking to a healthy diet at the NFL Expo?
Are we done yet? I haven't laughed that hard at a comment, though. That's good. Do I know this person?
They definitely know you.
I may have tipped them off. No, I did not.
Drew is notorious for preparing for the Kings Classic by getting an hour of sleep, whether or not he needs it.
Well, you know what's funny? I push content so hard. I'm red. This is funny. Well, I push content so hard before I go, and most of the time it's going to be worse this year. Like I said earlier about my dumbass schedule and family vacation the week before the Expo. It's going to be worse this year. By the time I get to the Expo, I feel like, I've done everything for everyone else. I'm not ready for the Kings Classic. So I'm pretty notorious for coming back to my room after drinking until 2 or 3 in the morning and then preparing for the Kings Classic for a couple hours. But hey, we live these moments very fleetingly. And I think that the Expo is one of my favorite weekends of the year. I'm not going to give up either one. I want to be successful at the Kings Classic. I also want to, go ripping and tearing until 2 in the morning. So I got to have both. So I cannot give you any tips on getting sleep. However, healthy diet of Natter Days, and
Yes,
like going like this with chips in my mouth at 4 a.m. I can give tips on that. That's what I got.
I left those peanuts sit by the fire last year in that plastic container, and they got toasty, which made them taste extra good.
Okay,
So
I'm down.
Very healthy. Very
Pro tip.
Very,
yeah, that's when the baseball game starts. This person knows me. They either followed me on Twitter or they know me.
street baseball game.
Got to work on my wiffle ball game before I get
All right,
there.
Doug, you have 25 seconds.
I'll get us back on track. And my answer is going to be Higgins, and it's going to come down to usage. Buffalo already has slot guys, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, and Dalton Kincaid. And I expect Dalton Kincaid to step up this year. But my point being is I think Keon Coleman is more of a big slot than he is an X receiver. And I think Buffalo has to use him as an X receiver. And he did come on before he got hurt last year. But my point being is that I don't think he's a traditional X receiver that's going to consistently win as an X receiver. Whereas Higgins, now he's going to have Collins opposite him. I kind of come around on the comparison to Michael Pittman. And that's kind of how he played at Iowa State anyway. I think he's going to be a target earner. I'm not sure he's going to do a hell of a lot after the catch, but my point being is that I like him as a better bet for 50 catches, 50 to 60 catches than I do for Keon Coleman.
All right, Drew, can you give us 5 more minutes to do speed round some tight ends?
I got time.
All right. We are going speed round. Doug, speed round, Doug.
What? I spent through that answer.
I said 25 seconds. You took a minute 25.
All right. No,
Doug,
not at all.
Stop. You're cut off. First up, we have, promising rookie versus a once promising rookie at 131. Colston Loveland, 135. Dalton Kincaid.
Hurry up,
Drew.
JJ. That question was too long.
You son of a bitch.
I don't trust Dalton Kincaid. I have a feeling Doug is going to try to set me straight here, but I don't trust Dalton Kincaid whatsoever. I'm going to take the swing on the rookie.
I'm in agreement. I think once Loveland's shoulder gets healthy, and it might take a month for him to get integrated, but when he is ready to go, I think it's going to be Loveland.
Wow, you guys actually did what I asked you to do. That never happens. It must be because you're here, Drew.
I'm scared of you.
Good. I like that. That's a little healthy. At pick 97, we have Mark Andrews looking to overcome what happened last year versus Evan Ingram at 102.
Okay. Well, boy, I must not have looked closely enough because I don't remember seeing this one. I looked them all over. Well, gosh, I think I'm going to Ingram there. I'm a little bit concerned about Andrews. I mean, I know, like, I don't really want to go to the stock, crutch answer, like, oh, he had too many touchdowns. I think the Ravens like to do that, and I think he can do it again for Mark Andrews. But I do worry a little bit that they're going to start to phase him out. I guess I'd be shocked if he's still a Raven, this time next year. I'm a little bit shocked that he is right now, to be honest. I'm surprised that they stuck with him. So I'm just a little bit concerned. I will say that Isaiah Likely did not do what I thought he would to come on last year. But I think Evan Ingram, I'm going to give him a shot. I'm not confident at all that he's going to turn out to be what people think he is, but I'm going to give it a shot. I think that if his ability is harnessed like it can be, we could have ourselves a top 3 tight end. So I'm going to give that a shot.
Nice and succinct. I appreciate you, Drew. Doug?
Yeah. Shut up. I'm going to go Ingram as well. I feel like we've been teased about the Joker role in Sean Payton's offense as much. It's been hyped up more than it actually is sometimes. Sometimes it hits with Jimmy Graham. Other times it doesn't hit with Blake Watson, stuff like that. He was brought in. I think he's the clear number 2 a target there. And if he stays healthy, and that's always a big if with him, if he stays healthy, I think he pushes for 80 catches. And I just don't think Andrews has that kind of upside in the offense now, especially with adding DeAndre Hopkins to Zay Flowers and so on. They've got enough targets in that offense now. I think Andrews' value is going to come through touchdowns, and I think Ingram's might come through touchdowns, but he's going to have a lot more receptions. 25 seconds.
Yeah, you can't just yell 25 seconds and make it 25 seconds.
I did it.
Like, that's not how life works. Anyway,
I look like Brad Pitt. Did it work?
Yes, it did.
Ooh.
It did, but my glasses are a little dirty.
Clean the glasses.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, it is time to say goodbye. A big thank you to Drew for taking time to talk to us tonight. Drew, let people know where they can find you and anything you are working on.
I noticed that, taking time to talk to us tonight. I noticed that, Jay. It's all right. I owe you guys a couple beers for what I did.
Just one shot, brother. One shot.
That's all right. I deserve it. Thank you so much for having me, guys. I had a blast. This was a lot of fun. You can find me on Twitter at Drew Davenport FF, and I'm the fantasy football lawyer on TikTok or Patreon. So, and the Auction Brief podcast. Almost forgot.
Yeah, make sure you're tuning into the Auction Brief. I know I say nice things about guests every week, but that is my favorite fantasy football podcast. I don't even play auctions, but I listen to the podcast because the fantasy football and the life lessons I learn are worth tuning in. So give it a listen. Be smarter. Doug?
Appreciate that.
Drew, thank you so much for appearing on the show tonight. I just want to say, hey, he's a great guy. He's a great auction player. He's an even better guy. So everything that he said, where to follow him, do that. You see my handle at Doug Worth. That's on both the socials, Blue Sky and the X. I believe the last article I did was with NFC defensive weak spots. So I break down the strengths and weaknesses of each player, or pretty much every player on the NFC side. And go check that out on FF today. And we'll have some stuff to talk about next week, I'm sure. But JJ, take us home.
Well, thank you all for listening. Drew, did you have something to say?
No.
Please like and subscribe. Yeah. I'm at JJ Wenner on Twitter, and Blue, follow the pod at FF Diehards. We'll be back next week at Wednesday at 8 p.m. with Dan Fornick to discuss offensive line rankings. Until then, remember, love yourself, know your worth. You are enough. Boat drinks, my friends. Boat drinks.